At the same time that Zone 5th and SLB were wreaking havoc in the Quad Cities, a violent gang feud was unfolding 170 miles west of Davenport, in the Iowa capital of Des Moines. The gangs, both subsets of bigger groups, began feuding in January 2020, when 3 members of a gang known as C Block were shot in a recording studio. D'Amico Carr and Kerry Henderson were both killed, and a third surviving victim was later charged with obstruction for allegedly deleting surveillance tapes so that the cops couldn't get to them. Their killings remain officially unsolved, but it's safe to say OTB was suspected of being behind the killing. Whether or not they were really responsible, OTB members reacted gleefully to the tragedy and went out of their way to disrespect the dead victims on social media, throwing gasoline on the fire. This led to a string of retaliatory violence, including a 2-day period in early May 2020, when OTB members allegedly committed 4 shootings. In one of them, OTB members Fabrice Jamar Bower Tuner, aka Fab, and Braden Craig Shafer, aka Stick Up, and others, allegedly followed rivals from a Des Moines shopping center, then opened fire at them from a moving car. Their 2 intended targets were not killed, but a third, unidentified gunman fired into the car containing Stick Up and Fab, and when the police got there, Shafer had been struck in the head. In the chaos that followed, officers pursued the white 2002 Chevy Trailblazer containing Shafer until it crashed. But when they took the OTB members into custody, it was apparent Shafer was suffering a potentially life-threatening wound. He was rushed to a hospital, ended up in a coma, and for a period was believed to be beyond help. He was just 19 at the time. But Shafer lived, and in a widely circulated video, he allegedly came out of the coma and shortly thereafter began throwing up OTB gang signs. Shafer, Fab, and 4 other OTB members were eventually hit with a RICO indictment and used their troubled pasts to argue for leniency. Fabrice, it turned out, had spent a childhood in foster care, Section 8, and homeless shelters. He was eventually jumped into a gang at the ripe young age of 13 and basically stayed in and out of jail from 16 to 22. Having barely survived the shooting, Shafer was crippled and suffered permanent brain damage. His attorneys and friends and family claimed he will never fully recover and heavily relies on others to complete day-to-day menial tasks, making him a burden on the prison system that now must hold him for the bulk of his adult life. Despite this, both men were given decades in prison, with little to no chance of release until they're in middle age.